Hi, this is Erin, and welcome to Everything EFL, my little podcast about English language teaching and other teachy stuff too. Credit and honourable mentions will be given during the episode or in the show notes. Let's crack on. So, you survived yesterday's episode and you're still here. I salute you. Okay, as promised, we're going to keep going with the future. We're going to dive right in with the difference between going to and present continuous for future plans. If you didn't hear the first episode about future forms, maybe go back and listen, and this one might make a little bit more sense. Okay, we're going to have to talk about the grammar rules a little bit here, so here we go. The present continuous tense is mainly used to talk about personal arrangements and fixed plans. Okay, we know that. It usually involves a second party. It could be a friend, a receptionist at the doctor's, an airline website. Questions to ask yourself: have you booked it? Do you have the tickets? Do you know the time? Do you know the place? If the answer is yes, please press 1 for the present continuous. Be going to can also be used to express a similar idea. However, it puts an extra emphasis on the idea of intention. I'm going to get a new job. Questions. Do I necessarily have to arrange with someone to look at a job website? Do I have to arrange with someone to send off my CV, to buy some appropriate interview clothes? If the answer is no, press 2 for be going to. It's simply a decision made before the moment of speaking. A decision, not an arrangement. Now, this is where it can get a bit sticky, as students like a concrete rule. They don't like grammatical grey areas or subtle nuances. And let's be honest, neither do we. We tend to get a bit stuck when these two overlap. And I'm going to give you an example of that now. Here goes. So there are some times when you can't arrange to do something. For example, do your homework when you get home. You're just going to go home and do it yourself. But it is a definite plan in your mind, so it can be quite natural to use the present continuous here. I'm doing my homework when I get home. But you could also use be going to. The difference is minimal. I'm doing my homework. I'm going to do my homework when I get in. And this is the point at which some students will start shifting uncomfortably in their chair. You may even start to doubt your own explanations. But I just say, look, if you're not sure whether to use going to or the present continuous, just use going to. So to recap, arrangements and definite plans made in your mind, especially in the near future, present continuous. A decision or plan made in your mind before the moment of speaking, going to or gonna. Scintillating stuff. So again, I mentioned yesterday, I'm using contractions, gonna, spoken grammar. As long as you make it clear when not to use it, for example, in formal letters, I say encourage them. But again, your call. Okay, so now the boring stuff's out the way. The biggest tip I can give you here is review. And this goes for everything I mentioned in the previous episode as well. Okay? Even if that light bulb goes on in the lesson, it doesn't really mean anything. Much as you like to believe your lessons are the centre of your students' universe, they do have other things on their mind. So leave time in future lessons to go over those future forms. Little review games and activities, constantly remind them. Now, one easy one you can do at the end of each lesson for present continuous or be going to is get students just to simply ask each other, what are you doing after class? What are you doing later? It's a great question because even if they haven't made concrete arrangements a la present continuous, I'm having dinner with a friend, we never ask, what are you going to do later when asking about plans? And it's also great on a Friday. What are you doing this weekend? And you can also do some nice sort of connected speech here as well. What are you doing as well? I always encourage them to soften the T on what and say, what are you doing later as well, for some nice natural language. So I would say remember to elicit some responses first and put some ideas on the board to help them. I'm meeting friends for concrete arrangements. I'll probably is another good one if they're thinking spontaneously. If they can handle it, include things like I'm going to have a nice long bath. So put some ideas on the board. For example, I'm meeting friends for concrete arrangements. You could also include might here. If they haven't decided yet, I might meet some friends. I'll probably is another good one if they're just thinking spontaneously. And if they can handle it, include things with going to as well, like I'm going to have a nice long bath. It's just an intention. It depends what you want to focus on. If you just want to focus on arrangements, stick to present continuous. If you think they're strong enough to just to talk about plans and intentions as well, include going to in there as well. Now, start by putting similar examples on the board, more closely related to your students' likes and hobbies. And then, again, if you think they can handle it, get them in groups to discuss which one is an arrangement and which one is just a decision or plan. You could have 2 columns. Once that's established, they can chat. But like I said, if you just want to stick to arrangements and present continuous. Now, keep these examples on a PowerPoint so that you can show it whenever you do this activity, just to remind them. Don't think just because you do it once, they'll always have it, okay? Elicit the language every time you do the activity before they chat so it sticks, and it just gives them a little bit of preparation. In terms of language and context, you can't get much more natural than this activity. How about a simple but effective, language-heavy, student-centered, engaging mingle activity? We all have a mingle, gets them moving around. So this one is a bit of a classic. The original activity is from old Cutting Edge Pre-Intermediate teacher's book, activity 4B, and it's called I'm Having Lunch with Madonna, and there are tons of versions out there. I have made my own because, people like Madonna can be a little bit outdated now. So basically, you've got 8 versions of a week-long diary, okay? There are slightly different versions of this diary. Some periods in the day are filled with appointments, meetings, classes. Some days are blank, or some sort of parts of the day are blank as well. And you hand out a copy of each week-long diary to each student, and they study their week and they see when they're free. And then the idea is that they have to try and fill all of the free gaps by mingling and asking classmates, I'm free on Sunday. What are you doing on Sunday evening? Would you like to blah, 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 blah. The partner looks at their diary, and if they're free at the same time, they make arrangements. Or they say, sorry, I'm meeting blah, 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 blah. So, like I said, I've designed my own because the names are quite old-fashioned in the Cutting Edge book. It takes you 10, 20 minutes to do. Again, don't forget to elicit the language of making arrangements, turning people down, saying yes, asking about times and places. Put all of that on the board before you begin so that the students have got a nice, solid scaffold to have a decent conversation. And you'll find that once they get into it, it's so engaging, it's so full of useful language that they're going to use again and again in their lives. TeachThis.com has a version called The Long Weekend, which includes some of these phrases for making arrangements, like I'm free, sorry, I'm busy. It's very, very basic, but for low levels, it's perfect. Once they've done that, you can do class feedback. Inquire about your students' full diary. What are they doing all this week? Tell me about it. Or tell your partner. Or tell your table. Whatever works. If the activity worked well and you feel that the students could do it again for more practice, they could maybe create their own celebrity identity and design their own week-long diary for homework. They could be Ariana Grande or Dwayne Johnson. What does their week look like? Who are they having lunch with? And then they could come into class and do it again, something like that. Or you could use this idea for your main mingle activity. Totally up to you, whatever you think your students will respond to better. Then what you could do is follow it up with some written homework about their week. What are their plans? And this just allows you to see if they're using those forms correctly at home without your help. Another good idea are some board games. Board games are brilliant for review at the beginning or the end of the class if you know you have a spare 10 minutes. They're fun, engaging. If you use a site like ISL Collective, the documents are all made on Word, so you can download them and adapt them, which is really sweet. You can also play board games on Zoom, so if you're online, I've put a link in the show notes that shows you how to do this. How about won't or wouldn't? Do you ever sort of make a point of teaching those things or focusing on those 2 things? I think it's neglected a little bit when teachers look at will. It's definitely beneficial to have a look at the negatives. We use won't and wouldn't for refusals. For example, he won't accept my apology. I told him I wouldn't do it. Tell him you won't do it. Or for things that don't work, like my car won't start or my computer won't log me in. Now, it's quite hard to actually find little focused activities or good ways to introduce this. So you may have to make something up yourself. Why don't you introduce this in the form of a little story, maybe just a paragraph, 2 paragraphs. Make it a story about yourself if you can. You might have to make up some details, but try and pull something from the recesses of your memory. You could tell the story first, get the students interested. This is something that happened to me. Students are always interested in you. Then you can give them the written text of what you just said. Alternatively, they can read and listen to you read it out loud at the same time, whatever works. And then get them to underline any uses of will in the negative. See if they can spot it. And then you could give them the two meanings. Refusal, something not working. Give them an example first if you like. And then see if they can match those underlined negative wills to the meanings. Now get them to underline a phrase and not just the verb, because like the examples I gave you, won't accept my apology, I wouldn't do it, won't and wouldn't are often used within phrases, and of course phrases are always much better than individual words anyway, so phrases and context are really good. And then why don't we get your students to produce some language themselves? Let's rely on some emotional connections here. So maybe you could come up with a list of questions they can discuss. Was there ever a time when you wouldn't accept someone's apology? Or was there ever a time when someone wouldn't accept your apology? Tell the story to your partner and then use that phrase somewhere in the story. And he wouldn't accept my apology. Again, do an example first just to help them out and monitor them and see how they go. And then maybe get them to swap. Use the same questions again as a review in the next lesson. Review, review, review. Like I said, it's always really useful. It doesn't matter if you're using the same questions. It's very, very useful to have those conversations again and again and again so that learning acquisition actually takes place. Okay, I'm done. I'm spent. I'm sure you are too. As always, these are just a few ideas, and I'm well aware I haven't covered the more complex aspects of the future here. So I hope that these 2 episodes have just given you an idea for the basics for the teachers who might need a little help. Again, I know you have far better ideas than me, and I would absolutely love to hear them. So please comment on Facebook or Instagram and share your activities with our lovely teaching community. Thank you so much for listening. This podcast is free and always will be, so if you feel like giving something back, you can do one of the following. You can subscribe to the podcast on your preferred platform, spare a few minutes and write me a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify, follow Everything EFL on Instagram, Facebook or Twitter, and engage with me and my followers. If you would like to contact me, my email is in the show notes. Finally, and most importantly, share this episode on social media and tell your colleagues. Share the love. Bye.